Welcome to Spooky News from Spooky Ventures for October 15th, 2021. I don't need to remind you that we're in the heart of what the rest of the world thinks of as spooky season. I'm not sure if that means it's our time or just the time for everyone else to jump on the bandwagon. Whichever it is, though, I love this time of year, and I bet you do too. As usual, before we get to the news, I have a few things to mention. First, stick around after I'm done talking for more information. That's where you'll find the source URLs and more information links for the various things talked about here. Secondly, don't forget to interact with this YouTube channel. Like our videos, share our videos, comment, and subscribe. For more spooky content, check out spookyventures.com. You can find spooky merch, including It's Always Halloween Somewhere merch at cafepress.com/spookyventures. Now, onto the news. And we start with books, and specifically comic books. Okay, I'm sure my age isn't a big surprise, but when I was a kid, Archie comics were very lightweight in terms of themes. If you wanted scary stories, you needed to go elsewhere. Well, these days, those comics are bringing in quite a bit of horror. According to a recent panel at a Comic-Con, they plan to double down on the horror angle with some new graphic novels and more. It still seems strange to me to think of Archie Comics as a source of horror, but that's the world in which we live now, and I think it's cool. I had a story about Scream last week, specifically how you can rent the Scream house. Well, let's continue the Scream trend this week. The latest update to the game Call of Duty includes Ghostface from Scream. It's locked until October 19th when the haunting event starts. This applies specifically to the Black Ops, Cold War, and Warzone games. Looking to television, if you like ghostly comedies, perhaps you should tune in to the new show Ghosts. Based on a British show called Horrible Histories, Ghosts airs on CBS and centers around a number of ghosts from different eras haunting a couple in a creepy old house they inherited. Mike Flanagan seems to be turning into one of the go-to guys for television horror. You're probably familiar with his Haunting of Hill House, Haunting of Bly Manor, and the new Midnight Mass. He has a series coming soon called The Midnight Club. But Edgar Allan Poe fans should be pleased to hear the latest news. He's going to be doing a series based on several of Poe's stories for Netflix. It's going to bear the title The Fall of the House of Usher. I think it'll be great to see a new Poe show. Next, I'm going to turn to movies, and we've got another of those science says this is scariest studies. Before I get to the actual story, I think I need to jump on a soapbox just a little here. I've seen some other articles that suggest that such studies prove that science is not to be trusted. So I want to sound off on this. First, I will agree that these studies don't really prove anything. They're fun, but not factually noteworthy. The studies themselves are flawed for a number of reasons, including the fact that they have not been peer-reviewed. Additionally, they're basing their entire judgment call on monitored heart rate, which doesn't really prove that it is a scarier movie that is causing this variant. They have a limited set of options for the stimuli, and with reasonably small sample size, they prove little. Also, for studies to results to have real merit from a scientific point of view, it must be repeatable. Doing a study only once doesn't really prove anything. This is an example of junk science. It plays on the fact that the average person has so little understanding of scientific method that they will give the study more credibility than it deserves. Media loves to run with these things because they generate clicks or views or whatever. So they spread virally despite having no real scientific validity. The problem is when people look at these as an example of science gone wrong, rather than a fun exercise that either qualifies as not science or science in such an early point in the process that it means very little. So I wanted to make clear that this story is presented here strictly for entertainment value. But in order to do that, I needed to explain why it does not actually represent science. And I should point out that I am not a scientist, but I am a science enthusiast. With all that out of the way, here is the new study. The methodology was that the participants were hooked up to heart monitors while they watched movies, featuring various characters ranging from Jason Voorhees, Michael Myers, Freddy Krueger, Chucky, Pinhead, and Samara Morgan from The Ring. Michael Myers scored the highest. Again, this isn't really scientific evidence, but it is fun. Way to go, Mr. Myers. Attendees of the recent New York Comic-Con were treated to a surprise in the form of getting to see Ghostbusters Afterlife. In addition, there was a panel about the movie. It must have been cool to be amongst the first audience to see the film. Our final news item is a sad one. The actress Julie Redding, known as the ghost haunting a man in the 1960 horror film Tormented, has passed away. Redding was 85 years old. Well, that's it for the news for this time. If all goes as planned, I'll be back next week for another edition of Spooky News. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for a new spooky feature in which I talk with author Bill Camp about a story he did in my book, Spooky Houses, Frankenstein, vampires and movies, and much more. We actually had a great time chatting. Looking to our calendar, there are some dates of importance coming up. Don't forget, you can always find the Spooky Calendar at spookyventures.com. Just scroll down until you see the calendar link. Today, 2 movies open, the long-awaited Halloween Kills and the folk horror Demigod. Next Wednesday, the 20th, is Bela Lugosi's birthday. A week from today, on the 22nd, a slasher titled 13 Fanboy opens. Until next time, don't forget you can find lots of spooky content at spookyventures.com. Spooky Ventures merch can be found at cafepress.com/spookyventures. You can find my books and more at garyhillauthor.com. Most importantly, always remember to keep it spooky. Spooky Ventures is the home for spooky content and spooky merchandise on the web. Check it out today at spookyventures.com. And remember, always keep it spooky.